You can have a company that only lasts a few years and you can burn the candle at both ends, work till midnight, have pizza parties, but you can't sustain that forever. And then at that point, you need programs within the company to be able to support employees, to be able to keep going and keep contributing without feeling like they're burning out or giving too much of themselves.
Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Advantage podcast, where we explore how leaders are shaping the future of workplace mental health. I'm your host, Stephen Sokoler, founder and CEO of Journey. Today, I'm thrilled to be speaking with my friend, Bayard Russell. Bayard is the program manager for GPAUSE, Google's groundbreaking mindfulness program. And this conversation will explore how mindfulness can transform workplace culture, support mental health at scale, and inspire organizations to take proactive steps towards well-being. Bayard, great to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Always good to catch up with you. I'm excited for this conversation. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey? What brought you to mindfulness and what brought you to lead that initiative at Google?
So I'm going to give you my life story.
We got plenty of time.
Good. So I first encountered meditation through reading some Beat Generation novels. So I read On the Road by Jack Kerouac in college, and that got me interested in what else he wrote. And then I found a book called The Dharma Bums, which got me into Buddhist-inspired poetry. And then I said, oh, that sounds interesting. And then I put it aside and forgot all about it for about 5 or 6 years. And then I joined an internet startup company, and I had the worst panic attacks of my life, got really anxious and said, I need some sort of wellness practice. In which case I remembered, oh yeah, I read some beat poetry back then. I read Turtle Island. What else can I do? And then I started joining some meditation groups in New York City, joined Dharma Punks NYC, joined the Interdependence Project with Ethan Nichtern, and I went from there. And then I joined DoubleClick, which had a meditation group, sat in with that group, and then DoubleClick got acquired by Google, and then that became GPAUSE.
Got it. And how did you go from you're a part of the meditation group to you're now leading the meditation group?
Well, as is often the case, opportunities come from changes. So with that initial meditation group, it was actually led by someone else. And then during the DoubleClick acquisition, they were laid off. And I was like, okay, well, I'll step in and run the meditation group. And then it went from there. And then when it moved over to Google, that meditation group became the New York branch of the GPAUSE program. And then, more recently, because of various kind of changes in the organization, GPAUSE needed help. And I stepped in from being a regional lead to leading the global program. So as always, there are changes, and you can see changes in a negative way, or you can say, hey, it's a chance to step up. It's an opportunity to help out and leave your mark.
I love that. And this may predate you, but Google's obviously known for innovation, but scaling mindfulness across such a large global organization must have its challenges. We'll talk about some of those challenges now that you've taken on this global role. But let's go back. What inspired the creation of GPAUSE when it first arrived at Google?
Yeah, so back in the day, there was an employee very early on in the single or double digits, Chad Meng Tan, who started the Search Inside Yourself program. And that was kind of translating mindfulness into programmer speak, kind of hacking your mind, right? That was like a multi-day program. Like Search Inside Yourself, it's basically a retreat. You go for multiple days and it really jumpstarts your practice. And Search Inside Yourself still happens at Google now, even though it became kind of an independent spinoff. But then there was a Google employee named Bill Duane, And Bill said, can we make this, branch out further? Can this be more accessible? So he started GPAUSE to say, hey, let's have shorter fundamentals of mindfulness trainings. Let's have this more accessible to each office. Let's not make it so people have to sign up for a 2-day retreat to get access to all these useful wellness tools. And I think that and then it branched out from there. And the other shift was going from having uh, a very thorough training process for facilitators to be able to lead a 2-day search inside yourself retreat to saying, hey, let's train a much broader set of Googlers that can go to their teams in each office and lead trainings. So I think it really broadened things. And so right now, like we have, 7,000 plus people on the mailing list, and we have volunteers in every office. And I think it's because of the efforts that Bill Duane did to take some of the lessons from Search Inside Yourself and make it more accessible.
That's amazing. And I did the Search Inside Yourself training many years ago and loved it and found it to be really, really a nice, helpful complement to my program. And as you obviously know, it brings together both the mindfulness with the science, right? And being able to tell that story in a way that, engineers and business leaders and other folks could say, okay, I'm not doing this as a soft, squishy thing, or I'm doing this because I want to, be really zen, but I want to do this because I want to be the best version of me personally and professionally, which I think is a good segue into talking about some of the impacts. So I'd love for you to share some of the impacts that you found through mindfulness and the GPAUSE program. And it's kind of a couple different elements to it, right? You could talk about it personally, which obviously you and I have talked about before. You could talk about it professionally, and then organizationally. So feel free to start wherever you want with that one.
Yeah, well, let's see. I'll start from the personal and kind of work my way out. So I would credit having a mindfulness practice for my own longevity at Google. I'm closing in at 18 years now, and I don't think I would have lasted that long if I hadn't had some sort of uh, change management process for myself. Because every time things start changing, I kind of go back to the well of a mindfulness practice to kind of reground myself. And things are always changing. So I think that's been really helpful. And I think that this is true of other Googlers. I remember that during the pandemic, we had these mini retreats that people would lead. You'd have maybe 3 different Googlers lead different styles of meditation, and it would be 1 to 2 hours. And we had, decent attendance. Maybe 50 people would come out for each of these mini retreats and sit together in a circle and practice. Then during the pandemic, suddenly everyone was isolated back in their home offices. They're feeling a certain type of way. And then suddenly we moved the retreats online, and suddenly you had 200, 300 people joining in on these online retreats. So it was kind of a signal that people needed that. And I think this is where this has really helped our organization to have these wellness tools available, because sometimes you have like, I remember, I think Dan Harris was saying at one point that meditation is like brushing your teeth. It just becomes a standard practice. So I think that my wellness practice is like brushing your teeth, but that every once in a while it becomes going to the dentist because your tooth is hurting and you you need the help. And I think as an organization, there have been times during Google's history where GPAUSE and their other wellness programs has been elevated from brushing your teeth to, hey, we need a dentist right now.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I think perhaps it's even worth taking a step back to explain what GPAUSE is, and how it currently works.
Oh yeah, yeah, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? So GPAUSE is a program that makes sure that there are mindfulness uh, tools available in every office. So we make sure that there are meditation spaces available in each office, and we make sure that there are guided meditations available for each time zone globally. And things have shifted a little bit because in the early days, everything was in person. We didn't think about leading things over video. But because it's a hybrid workspace now, we're thinking more in terms of time zones. So we make sure that at every time zone around the globe, there's a set of facilitators that can lead guided sits any time of the day. In addition to having spaces where if people want to go and do their own practice, they can go and sit, have a respite. So that's our main focus. So we train a set of facilitators, all Googlers. This is all volunteer led, and we have guided sits available from session leads, and then we have site leads that help make sure that there are various programs available in each office.
Fantastic. And what are some of the challenges that you faced in scaling it globally? You had mentioned that you stepped into that role, and I'm assuming that some of that scaling took place before you stepped into that role. But what are some of the challenges that you have globally?
Having a centralized team can be challenging on a global scale. So we need to have volunteers in all these different time zones. How do we coordinate them? So there's certain basic things like having a shared charter that people can look at and kind of know what the roles are, and then having different check-in meetings at different time zones. Some of them not convenient for everyone, but we make it work. And then having a shared chat room. We use Google Chat, of course, because we're at Google, so that's what we use. But any shared chat room is really helpful to have this kind of asynchronous uh, joining of minds across time zones. So I think that's been one of the challenges is coordinating a team that's global and people that are on the other side of the world and still want to contribute.
Yeah, well, I think the fact that the main challenge has been time zones or maybe even languages versus like mindfulness is so universal in its concept and its principle. It speaks to that there aren't so many cultural challenges. Whereas if we were talking about, let's say, rolling out a therapy program, right? Like Google obviously has a whole host of programs, right? There might be different challenges rolling it out in India versus South Africa versus Canada or the US. Whereas mindfulness is one thing that lends itself to that sort of universality. I'm not saying that right, but you get it,
Yeah,
of the human experience.
we'll coin a new word here: universality.
Something,
Let's make
something like
universality happen.
that. All right, let's talk about leadership. So, how have Google's leaders supported GPAUSE, and how critical is that for the success of the program?
So I think we may have talked about this in a separate conversation, but it's a great thing to bring up. Over time, the perception of the role of meditation and mindfulness has shifted, I think, in a very positive direction. Uh, in the early days, uh, kind of pioneers like Chad Ming Tan and Bill Dwayne had to frame everything as a productivity tool. I remember Bill put together a Google Doc listing all of the benefits of how much more productive people can be if they have a meditation practice. So you had to justify to engineers to say, hey, you're going to put 20 minutes in, but then you're going to get 2 hours back because you're going to be more focused for longer. But that wasn't always the case. Mindfulness doesn't always lead to productivity, right? Because obviously you're taking time out to sit, and that's taking time away that you could be coding or drinking coffee, which is also a great productivity tool, but not necessarily good in excess. So I think over time, particularly with the kind of the stresses of the world with, with the pandemic and things before that, things after that, that they started seeing this as a part of wellness rather than productivity. And that made a lot of these programs easier to swallow. So you don't have to say, hey, we're going to offer this because it's going to give you a 10% lift in productivity. Instead, we're saying, we're going to offer this program. As a result, employees are going to be happier. They're going to feel more grounded and balanced. And then they're going to stay with the company because they actually enjoy working here and they feel like the company's looking out for them. So I think it it folds more into employee retention than necessarily 5 to 10% boost in productivity.
It's interesting to hear you say that because with people that are listening, they might be thinking, well, how could I bring this into my organization? Or I could never bring this into my organization because of exactly that, right? If it's not viewed through the lens of, oh, it's making people more productive, then it's a waste of time. And I've had that conversation many times over the years with attorneys and HR leaders and other folks who say, well, if we add a half hour or 20 minutes or 10 minutes, we're taking time away from people, to which the counter is, well, every study has shown that actually gives you back time, right? That you make better decisions, that your thinking is clearer, that you dot, 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 right? Et cetera, et cetera. But it's interesting to hear how it evolved at Google to now be more wellness and well-being and retention and employee happiness versus productivity.
Yeah. Yeah. Over time, as a company exists for longer, burnout becomes more of a topic that you want to address, because you can have a company that only lasts a few years and you can burn the candle at both ends, work till midnight, have pizza parties. I've done that. I've been at a startup where we had a lot of late night pizza parties on Saturday at midnight, but you can't sustain that forever. And then at that point, you need programs within the company to be able to support employees to be able to keep going and keep contributing without feeling like they're burning out or giving too much of themselves. And I think mindfulness is a way to do it, and it's a relatively low cost way to do it, because if you think about the various perks a company can provide to help support their employees, uh, sitting quietly in a room is probably a lower cost than giving everyone lattes.
Yeah, I think that's right. What advice would you give to other HR leaders or other organizations trying to implement a mindfulness program?
I would say look to build the program in a way that welcomes volunteers, because I think that there's a lot of people in organizations that are very passionate about wellness. It's something that is a very positive thing they can do to support their fellow employees. And it also makes it a lower cost program for you to implement as a manager or leader, because you can put together some central team, and then you can gather volunteers, and then you can have the program almost sustain itself. GPAWS was always a grassroots organization, and that's something that's made it resilient over years of changing leadership and policies, because at the grassroots there's a lot of people who are passionate about wellness for themselves and sharing it with others. So it just kind of sticks around and has its own momentum, as opposed to having a program where it's very top down. Then you're almost kind of force feeding a message to people instead of having people kind of share the message themselves.
I love that. And I know one thing that a lot of HR leaders struggle with any program is engagement, right? How do you get people to know about it? How do you get them to show up? How do you get them to show up consistently? So I'm curious what's worked for you and Google and GPAWS, and if there's anything that hasn't worked. Curious to hear that.
Yeah, that's always a challenge. The signal to noise ratio is a problem at Google, and it's a problem at other companies too. You just get a lot of emails, right? So I think that part of something that's worked is having an opt-in approach, where we share some initial messaging to a very broad audience and say, if you're interested in guided meditations, we have an alias you can sign up for, and then you'll get invited to things, as opposed to blast inviting everybody and then having people start to tune things out. Same thing, we have a newsletter, but people opt into the newsletter. But our initial blast, we reach out to as many people as possible. Then once we have this more targeted list, that's where we share things. And we make sure that when we share things, to share things that are relevant. Mostly our newsletters are focused around events that people can attend, or apps they can use, or tools they can use. Make it very, very usable, so no one feels like we're wasting their time. Um, so I think that's been good. In the past, we've also done things like put up posters and put things up around cafes just to have visibility, and you get some people that normally wouldn't even see it say, "Oh, I didn't know this existed." But I do think it's an ongoing challenge, because I still encounter people that are saying, "Oh, I didn't know that we had this. This is great." And it's great that when they find out about it, they're excited about it, but it's also a cause for concern that, "Oh, you didn't know this program existed?"
Right. And it's a fairly well-known program both inside and outside of Google, right? So it's just the nature of people are busy, you started a company, you have a million things to do, systems, passwords and learning and new colleagues, and then oh, there's all these programs that maybe you hear about and forget about or you never even hear about. Is it incorporated into onboarding anywhere or in recruiting? Like, does it come up anywhere in those sort of early days when an employee starts?
Yes. Yeah, because it's part of the overall wellness offerings. So that's a good thing to make sure that it's linked to from various kind of onboarding wellness sites. But I think it shouldn't stop there because even if it's listed among lots of different programs that get lost in the mix. So there always needs to be things at the top of the funnel to bring it back to people's attention. And something I like to do is have kind of a quarterly refresh where I remind people that, of what the New York's programs are, what the global programs are, just to bring it back top of mind. Because otherwise, uh, I'd be surprised if every employee remembers what was in their onboarding.
Yeah, I think that's right. A steady heartbeat is helpful, but not bothering people too much, and then you scare them off and they tune out everything. All right, as we start to come to a close, so you know that Journey is all about proactive mental health. You know that meditation, for me, similar to you, I found it through a book, transformed my life. Um, any suggestions, not so much for how to bring it into a company, which we talked about a little bit, but how to bring it into your own life? How do you find mindfulness, help people find mindfulness, help them build a daily consistent habit? Anything that's worked for you or that you've seen work for others?
Something I've taught other people that reminds me to teach it to myself is to think about ourselves as scientists of our own minds, that we're just experimenting and seeing what works and discarding what doesn't. And I think that's been a good reminder to give to myself and others when I'm on this journey. Sorry to throw in throw in the word
It,
journey
it,
there.
it happens a
Uh,
lot.
very very appropriate. But yeah, like I think I've taken an experimental approach that I'm not committing to doing something for the rest of my life. I'm trying it out for myself, see if it works, try it out for a couple of weeks, do a trial, and then discard it or put it into my toolkit. And I think that's been a very helpful thing to constantly say, hey, I'm going to try something new and I'm probably going to fail. It's probably not going to work, but maybe it will. And then I add it to my toolkit. And if it doesn't, I try out something else. And I think that takes the pressure off to, one, expect that it's going to work right off the bat, and then get discouraged when it doesn't, and then immediately discard it. I usually give it a couple weeks of concerted effort and say, okay, does this work for me or not? So I try to encourage that to other employees that are exploring it and saying, well, maybe this isn't for me. And it's like, well, before deciding if it's not for you, try it out. But ultimately, you are the scientist of your own mind. You get to decide if it works, but don't discard it off the bat. Try it out.
Yeah, I so often hear I can't meditate or mindfulness isn't for me, and just giving it a fair shake is obviously important. And you might find it's not a practice that you find enjoyable or helpful. I doubt that. I mean, I believe the enjoyable part because that part takes some time. It's an acquired taste, but I think as you and I know, it can really lead to some subtle but significant shifts in your life and your perspective, both at work and personally.
Yeah.
So, Bayard, thank you. Mindfulness is obviously a super powerful tool, and programs like GPAUSE show how you can scale these initiatives globally and can help both people to be healthier and happier and have a more resilient workforce that has, as you touched on, lower turnover and is more productive, even if that's not how we need to message it nowadays. So, Bayard, thank you for your insights as always and your friendship. It's been great to hear about your growth, taking over the global program, learning how Google has incorporated this, how it evolved over the years. And for those of you listening, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to subscribe, rate, leave a review. I'm Stephen, and this has been the Mental Health Advantage. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.